Everybody, welcome to the Love Vibration. I got a question for you. Are you a normal person or are you a free weirdo? All right. Well, guess what? I'm a free weirdo. What does that mean? All right. Well, let me explain. So I've always been an original, unique person. Everything from how I look to my name. My name is Brian Go. I'm a mix. I'm half Chinese, half white guy. I've always just done my own thing, Well, when I was young, I always just did my own thing, I knew exactly what I liked. I knew exactly, what I was attracted to, what I was into. No one told me what to be into. I was just into things. And then, as the years went by, people and others started telling me what I should be into, the programming started taking shape. And before I knew it, I wasn't free anymore. I wasn't that weirdo anymore because people recognized me as being different and voiced their opinion that they didn't like that. They wanted me to fit into a box. And I never wanted to fit into it. I used to watch Muppet Babies when I was a kid. That's how old I am. And guess who my favorite character is? I've already said this in another video, but I always resonated with Gonzo. Gonzo, still to this day, my absolute favorite Muppet. And he is a weirdo. Not only is he a weird character, but his literal animal that he is a weirdo. Like Kermit's a frog, Fozzie's a bear, and and Gonzo is a weirdo. And I always loved that, He was always the wild one, just doing his own thing. And everyone else looked at him. They're like, Gonzo, what are you doing? Why can't you be normal? They didn't appreciate that he was a weirdo. But I always did. I was like, yo, Gonzo is the best. Gonzo is the freaking best. I'm Gonzo. And so, I started out as Gonzo, I was allowed to be Gonzo as a child, My parents were cool like that. They didn't say, hey, you're a little boy. You got to be into boy things. They just let me be into stuff. And I was always kind of into everything, When I went to kids' houses, I would play with their He-Man toys. But if there was girls there and they had My Little Ponies, I would play with that too. Because I was like, this is cool. It's all cool. Like, I love the He-Man characters, Skeletor, all of them, Orko. Yeah, they were badass. I like that. I was a badass little kid. But at the same time, I thought the My Little Ponies were cool too, because they were bright and colorful and stuff. And I was like, that's cool too. Like, they're both cool. Like, but I was way more into like the He-Man stuff. At home, I never had like My Little Ponies or anything. But, if we went over to a friend's house and they had a little sister or something, I'd be like, oh, cool. I'll play with that too. Why not? So I had an open mind. I was fortunate. Born with a pretty open mind as far as stuff like that, no programming. Like, I wasn't told, no, you're not allowed to be into that because, boys are into this, girls are into that. I wasn't programmed with that yet, but, that programming did come, once I started growing up more. It honestly happened once we moved. I grew up in Long Island and then moved to Connecticut when I was about, just turning 9 years old. And up until the move, I was a free weirdo. I was allowed to be myself, like what I liked, and no one was telling me otherwise, and it was totally cool. But once we moved, I went into fourth grade, and this was the first time I experienced people, putting me down for being different. They didn't like how I was. They didn't like how I looked. They thought my name was strange, which it is. It's different. It's definitely different. I love my name now. I love it. But back then, they were giving me a hard time about it. So I'm like, I don't like my name. I wish I had a normal name. I wish I was more normal. Why am I this weird person? Why am I so different? yeah, they would pick on me for any little thing, any little thing. And, so that's conditioning. That's telling you, hey, how you are is incorrect, because people are telling you it's incorrect. So, what happened with me was I started shutting down. I started shutting down because I didn't get it. As a child, I didn't understand. All I knew was that people were giving me a hard time, and it had to do with things. It had to do with like my body type, and just whatever, just whatever. And so this continued. Yet still, I always kind of wanted to push boundaries. So around the age of 15, I started, I went to my first local punk show. So I was, where I grew up, and at the time I grew up, later 90s or mid 90s, we had a lot of punk shows going on where we lived. And, shout out A-OK, rest in peace, my boy Nate. I love you so much. I can't wait to see you again. But yeah, went to, there was a local band in my school called A-OK, and they are still the goats. They're amazing. And there's recordings of them out there. So it's amazing stuff. And, we were in high school, and I went to my first show and connected like so much. This was a group in high school that actually accepted me. Finally I found my folks. And this came after I stood up to myself, to someone that was giving me a hard time. I stood up to myself, not in the best way, but I did it. And I gained respect, especially from this group of people who were like kind of the outcast. Because at this point in time, there was like the normal folks who were like pretty preppy. And then there were the outsiders, the ones, facial piercings, the goth kids, the alternative kids. And this was not accepted back in the day. If you were like this out there person, it's not like today where it's normal. You see people with tattoos and piercings all the time. You don't really think twice about it. But back then, if that's what you were like, you would get harassed by a majority. You would just be walking down the street and people would call you derogatory things. But I didn't care. This was the group I resonated with, and, full on, didn't mind being different anymore because I found a group. I was the same within this group, I was different overall from the majority, but within this group, I belonged. And so that was really cool. I still love everybody in that group, to this day, still friends with many of them. And so, that's what happened as far as, my programming. It started out, I started out free and then realized, I got to shut down. People aren't liking who I am. And then I felt more free to just be who I am, this like punk rock kid. So yeah, I stayed with that. I started playing drums at the age of 15, I still do to this day. And, that just kind of became my identity, and it was cool. It was cool. It's what I connected with at the time. So time goes on, I stay like this and that. And still, I'm not totally free like I was when I was once a kid. I very much felt like I needed to put on some sort of, act that will be accepted. And for me, that act was being more like tough, sticking up for myself, because I'm someone that, got bullied and harassed growing up. So I was like, all right, I need to be tough so this doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So I started acting that, the more manly, tried my best to be, as manly as I could, this is conditioning. This is what the world told me I should be. And so I went along with it, I still didn't know. I still didn't realize I wasn't free. I wasn't thinking technically about this or in these terms. So, I grow up, I'm turning into this person, this character, hardcore kid, played hardcore metal music with the screaming, that heavy drums, bashing the drums, barely playing them. I'm just bashing them. And yeah, having fun, and it's all good. but this is the person who I was then, still I wanted to push the boundaries of what I could look like and like kind of act like, but still, I wasn't free because I'm still putting on an act for an audience. I still want to present myself in a certain way so that I would be treated a certain way. And time goes on, and during rehab, so I was in rehab about 8 years ago now, I want to say. No, about, yeah, maybe 8 years ago, 2027. Wow. I forget. I'm not 27, 17. But anyways, 7 or 8 years ago. And my taste really started changing. I kind of put the metal and rock and hardcore stuff behind me and just became way more of a hip hop head. Now, I've always had hip hop roots. Hip hop was actually my first love before I started listening to any sort of rock music. And even when I was playing punk and hardcore and metal, I always still listened to rap. I always loved hip hop. But 7 or 8 years ago, I was like, I just don't resonate with rock anymore. After my last hardcore band, Moroi, broke up, shout out to all the Moroi people. I love you guys. After that broke up, I was like, I'm done with it. I didn't enjoy it anymore. I didn't resonate with it. It seemed too negative for me. I realized it dragged me down. The content of the music, the vibe. I was like, I don't vibe with this anymore. So I basically just started, primarily being a hip hop guy. My style changed, and in rehab, I became a sneakerhead too, which is crazy because I never cared about anything like that, But yeah, so, hip hop head. And so my physical style changed and kind of my attitude too. I kind of became more just like chill with things, not so angry. In rehab, I really worked on myself. It was an inpatient long-term rehab there over a year. And then I spent a year after I graduated this program in their like halfway house, transition house, they called it. And so I've worked on myself a lot and I'm a more chill person. Tried to put that anger behind me as best I could because I always grew up angry, from getting bullied and harassed. That turned into anger for me. And that was something that I still struggle with till this day. That's a big one for me. But anyways, so my style changed over the years. And yet I recognize this now. I was still not free. I was still not the free weirdo that I was born to be. I was getting closer, but I was still not there. And so recently, June 2nd, well, no. Let's take it a little further back before that. So I was doing really well after rehab. I started working again for the first time in a while. And I did feel free. I still had an issue with how people viewed me, and if people made me feel demasculated or something, anything that they would say to me to make me feel less of a person, I would really take it hard still and, get upset, get angry about it, and have a reaction, have a strong reaction. This is a big trigger for me, people commenting on me and, if someone even jokes about it, like an example, this one dude, I love this dude at work, but he goes something like, "What's up, Girl Scout?" or something like that. And I immediately, the switch flipped and I was like, "What'd you just call me? What'd you just say?" Heated immediately. And this is a nice guy too, I know, he doesn't mean anything like that, but it doesn't matter. This is a trigger for mine. And this is what happens when something like that happens. And so this is recent. But overall doing a lot better recently before the affirmations. But then I got into a relationship with someone. I haven't had a romantic relationship in years, since before rehab. And so I had a romantic relationship and turned into this character that while this relationship was going on, I thought I was the man. I thought I was so cool. I was like, yo, I'm with this girl right now, you know, and like, I'm just the man. I'm just the best. And, you know, became this, you know, cockier, not like I was flaunting it, but like it definitely boosted my ego a lot. A lot, a lot, a lot. And when that ended, it ended before, so it was an interesting relationship because it had a time limit on it, because she was moving in several months, and we're like, let's just do this until you move, and you know, that'll be it. But we ended up ending it before she moved because things were just happening. And so I still, you know, saw her after things ended, after we broke up, and I just turned into the biggest jerk on the planet. You know, I didn't know it was still in me to be like this. You know, it was rough. But it was eye-opening. I needed this. I needed this to show me, like, wow, you got to work on this. This is still in you. You know, you didn't know it was in you because you haven't been tested with it, but you were just tested with it, and you need to work on it. And so, you know, it really helped me. I was like, I don't like who I am. I do not like who I am. I thought I was doing better, but I realized I had backslidden big time. You know, with everything, even sobriety. You know, I broke my sobriety during this. I still haven't drank, but I started using other substances, weed and kratom. I started using again. Even though I had excuses for the weed, I'm like, yeah, I need it. I'm going to try it to help me sleep. The other thing was straight up kratom. That's just straight up, I wanted to feel high a little bit. So, you know, that happened. And so I'm like, I don't like who I am. I don't like this guy. And, you know, that was several months ago. And, you know, then I realized I had a crush on this other girl. And because of that, I was like, listen, if you actually do end up asking this girl out and something happens, you don't want to be this guy you currently are. You need to work on yourself so that you're better, because you actually like this girl and you don't want to be how you were with this previous relationship that just happened. And so I'm like ready to like work on myself. And that's exactly when this video came out from Princey. I'll link it again in the description. I talk about this all the time, but it's talking about affirmations, how you have to reprogram this. And it really connected. It really made sense to me. You know, this needs reprogramming because it's been programmed already. That conditioning right from the start, you know, when people started saying, hey, I don't like how you are. You know, you're a weirdo. I don't like that. That's when the conditioning started, and it kept going throughout my whole life, just being conditioned. This is how you should be. You know, I know you were like that, but that's wrong. This is how you should be. You know, you're a man. You got to act like this. You know, this, and you know what I'm saying? Conditioning, brainwashing, really. That's what it is. And so once I started writing down these personal affirmations for myself and what I wanted to change, slowly but surely, it came to the realization that I wasn't free, that this person who I want to become is free, but I'm not that person yet. This is the stuff I'm trying to become. You know, I want to be a person full of love and love everybody, but I never felt safe to do that, because guess what? People are going to look at you and be like, what the heck is up with you? Why are you being so weird? You know, like, you know, that's weird. People do that sort of thing, you know? So I never felt safe to do that. You know, never felt safe, you know, in my body, you know, always had body image issues. Never felt safe to just be confident with who I am, you know, never liked my chest, always had issues with that. So, you know, I you know, kind of like tried to hide it, you know, never wanted to stand confident, stuff like that, you know. And so I'm recognizing all these things, and I'm writing affirmations that countered these things. You know, I am a confident person, but not cocky. And when I would say these affirmations, I would stand. I would say, how does it feel to have 100% confidence without caring about what anyone thinks, and just being 100% cool with yourself. And, it feels like this, I don't care. I feel good. I feel good in my body, that was so huge for me. And feeling free to be the person I want to be that Christ-like character that's filled with love, because I connected with this feeling of love back in the day. It was real for me. And that's how I knew what I'm shooting for, I'm going to talk a little bit more about love in a bit. But so, yeah, with these personal affirmations that I'm writing myself to counter everything I'm trying to flip, it occurred to me that in a nutshell, I want to be a free weirdo. I want to be a free weirdo. I am a free weirdo. I was born a free weirdo. My inner child is a free weirdo. And that's who I want to be for the rest of my life, every single day. I want to be free to feel good about myself, to love myself 100%, as is right now, currently. As I'm growing, as I'm expanding and progressing and elevating and rising, I want to be a free weirdo to just love myself 100%, because that's the only way I could spread it. And I want to spread it. I want to give back and cause that positive ripple effect. Those little connections that leave people saying, yo, that was a cool connection. I'm going to do that too. I'm going to take that and, spread that, it's a ripple effect. Because God knows I've caused so many negative ripple effects. So many. And I cannot do that anymore. I can't live with it. I just can't live with that. Just knowing that I made the world a worse place so many times, time and time again. I'm flipping that. God is saying, yes, you did that, but I forgive you. You forgive yourself. I forgive myself. It had to happen. It happened. That's the reality of it. It happened. But that's how it had to happen in order for you to become the free weirdo you are again, which I am. Yo, I achieved it. Hello, this is a miracle. I achieved being a free weirdo again. Holy shnikes. And yo, I am a free weirdo. Say it. I am a free weirdo. I am free to be myself. I am free to get rid of all that conditioning where the world and people and things told me how I should be. I'm going to be how I am, how I actually am, minus conditioning, And the best version of this free weirdo too, which for me is filled with love, like Christ-like style. Know what I'm saying? And the reason so here's the thing. Affirmations are how you program your brain to be how you want to be. So why am I choosing to be full of love? Why am I not just choosing to be a happy person and love my friends and myself, but not everyone else? Why do I want to love everyone and everything? And for me personally, this is because I connected with that feeling of pure love in around 2012. I had my first real deal spiritual experience where for the first time in my life, I felt love and everyone's heard about love your whole life. And I've had relationships and, I've had people in my life that I love. But it was so much an on paper thing. It was more of a knowledge thing than an experience thing. The women I loved, it was more like lust and infatuation. And once that wore off, I didn't feel it anymore. That was the whole initial connection. It was that spark, that exciting spark when you first, fall in love with someone. But in 2012, I was at a concert with my cousin Denny. Shout out to Denny. I love you so much. I've always loved you. You've always been my favorite cousin, like by miles. I love you. I love all my cousins, but Denny, you're my favorite. Always have been. We went to a concert. We saw Snoop. The concert was called Catalpa, and Snoop headlined. And you guys know I love my Snoop. And he did Doggy Style, his first album, in full. And we're just it was 2 days, I believe. Yeah, 2-day festival. And, I've never felt love like that before. Like full of love, full of just, there was no negativity in my body at this moment during this weekend. I only felt love for myself, for everyone around me. I don't want to say I loved God yet because I wasn't believing in that at the moment, but I felt love for myself, which I've never really felt. I felt forgiveness. And to just rewind a little bit before this concert, I think literally a week before, I was in the hospital because I tried to drink myself to death. You know, I downed a whole bottle of brandy. I was calling people, telling them goodbye. And these people called the ambulance and said, listen, you know, this dude's going to kill himself. So I, you know, went in the hospital. I Hannibal Lectered myself out of there. You know, I was like, guys, I'm sorry. You know, I was just drinking. I'm fine. You know, I made them think I was fine. And I kind of was fine after that because I really wanted to go to this concert. So, you know, got out, went to the concert, coming off of that, you know, that experience that just happened in the hospital, you know, me being so down, I wanted to die, you know, which was nothing new. I felt that way since I was 15 on and off. And so, yeah, at this concert, you know, it was the perfect alignment for me to really feel love, full on the love vibration, connectedness, love, forgiveness, you know, sharing it, having it, receiving it, all of that. And so that's why, and obviously I'll never forget that experience. It was, you know, one of the most key moments in my entire existence so far. And so that is why with these affirmations and the person I'm trying to become, that's why I'm trying to become this person, because I felt it before. I was there. And this is me trying to stay there as much as I can. And it is an extreme experience. When you feel that for the first time, you're like, so this is love. This is that love that, you know, we've all heard of that 4-letter word, but how many people actually feel that in their lifetime? And I'm realizing probably not as many as you would think. I realize that family members of mine, you know, friends of mine, you know, just random people might never have felt love like that ever. And, you know, for them, love is just something that they know about. And that maybe they think they've felt, you know, to some degree, and probably have to some degree. But, you know, we're talking about, you know, real deal, full on, you know, as much love as a human could experience, being filled with it to the brim and wanting to share that. Because when you're at that point, you can't hoard that for yourself. You need to give that back. You need to. That's what vibrating that high does to you. It makes you a person that needs to just give that. And so that is why the love vibration exists. That is why I exist. To be a free weirdo again, and to be an example of it. To be that Christ-like example. This is what you want. You might not know it. You might not realize it. But once you connect with it, you realize this is what I wanted all along. To be that free weirdo, you know, to just have peace with yourself 100%, you know, to feel 100% comfortable in your body no matter what the situation is, you know. Just be free to be full of love and not care what people think about you one way or the other, you know. I was watching Ralph Smart yesterday. Shout out to the GOAT, to my teacher, to like my number one teacher, Ralph Smart. I've been a student for a while now, since 2012, I think. Yeah, you know, it doesn't matter whether people love you or despise you. You love yourself 100%, and that's what matters here. You know, you do you. You connect with your inner child, free weirdo, and people are going to think one way or another, and it does not matter. They'll either connect with it and be inspired, or they're going to fear it because they don't have that. They're not going to get it, and they're not going to like it. And they might try to take that away from you. But, you know, we unbreakable. Straight up. Straight up. They could bust our balls, you know. they could, break our body, this flesh vehicle, but they cannot break our spirit. Our spirit is unbreakable. Once we get to this level, unbreakable spirit, because we realize that anyone trying to knock us down is a test. And guess what? What do I always say? What do I always say, guys? This is Earth School, and the tests, these tests we go through when people test us, or when life situations test us, when an ant crawls on me, this is Earth School. You know what I'm saying? This is how we grow. This is how we know if we've grown. When people test us, when they push our buttons, when they trigger us, when they make us feel less than this high vibration, that's how we know, is this for real, or are we just saying we're like this, So thank you for anyone who tests me. Thank you for any situation that tests me, because I need this to be for real. I don't want to be a person that talks about this and then when the time comes isn't for real. But you know what? If the time comes and I am tested and I'm not as, far ahead as I think I am, that's awesome. That's awesome, because at least I know what I got to work on. And then I'll just write down an affirmation to counter it, and I'll keep going with it. And I'm going to keep programming this every single day. Not one missed day since June 2nd. And, not one missed video, not, me rambling and speaking freely, not one missed video. And, this is what God wants me to do. It's what I want to do. We're in collaboration. This is God has shown me this is how you're going to become your greatest self and keep getting greater and greater. This works for you. It's exactly what you need. It's helping me love my identity, which I've always struggled with. I never liked being Brian Go. I always wanted to be anyone else. And now I'm like, literally all the time, I'm like, I get to be Brian Go. Frick yeah. Like, I get to be this guy. I get to be this, every day. It was the best thing ever all along. I just, I needed that perception shift. I didn't realize it because people were telling me it's not the best thing. But guess what? I realize it's the best thing ever. I get to be Brian Go. You get to be who you are. And that's the best thing ever. Tell yourself that. I get to be me, which is the best thing ever. I get to be me, this one-on-one, one-of-one person. There's one me. There's one of this person, and I get to be this. And I get to make the world a better place just by existing. Just by existing, And now that we vibrate high like this, anywhere we go, anyone we see, will be affected with it. Whether they don't connect with it yet, or whether they do and they receive the love that we give them, we just do it. We just do it. This is who we're becoming. That free weirdo, If you haven't connected with love the way I described, trust that it's out there. Trust that it's out there. It's out there. It exists. I'm not the only person to ever experience that. I did have another experience like that recently, a couple videos ago. You could check out what just happened with me. It exists. Love exists. More than what we know about it on paper. You could actually feel it, experience it, be filled with it, and want to share it. That's the best part, getting to give it back. I never got to do that back in the day because I didn't have it within me. I was vibrating way too low, So guys, this is your hope for the day. This is your little, this is the message. This is the message from God. I want you to be a free weirdo. You were created to be a free weirdo. You were created to be you. Not what this world tells you you should be, but you. The actual you that you were born as, that maybe you didn't get to be much because maybe you were conditioned right from the start. Maybe the programming started instantly, so you never even connected with who you actually are. I'm saying if you put the work in, if you do affirmations the way I do every single day, you could connect with the person you were born to be, the one that God said, this is the real you, Forget about what you were told. Forget about what you were taught. The real you is in there. The real you is in there. They're meant to feel amazing. They're meant to feel amazing. You think you were meant to suffer and that's it? No. That suffering is so you could flip it the way I did and turn it around and feel incredibly amazing. The more you suffered, the lower you've gotten, is the higher that you are capable of rising. So don't miss that opportunity. Don't miss it. Make your suffering worth it. It was there for a reason. It was there so you could learn, grow, expand, rise, and just become this person you never even thought was possible. You know, this person who I am right now, unrecognizable from even about a month ago. You know, this is real. It's happening quick. And people might not know what to make of it. Does not matter. They will get used to the you new. They will get used to the new you. They'll get used to it. You know, let them be freaked out by you. Seriously, because they don't get it. The ones that do get it will love it. They will be like, I am so happy that you found yourself. I am with you with this. I am celebrating you. The people who don't get it will have fear, and they're not, and that's fine. Let them. Don't let it, don't let it bring you down. Stay up, be the example. You change them by your example. Don't try to change them. Just do you, and that vibe will rub off. They're going to eventually just be like, yo, I get it. I get where you're at. Eventually. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that's not up to you. Your job is just connect with that free weirdo, fill yourself with love, and share it. That's your only purpose in life. Everything else it'll happen the way it should. Just trust. I'm trusting. I'm exactly where I need to be at this very moment. God knew that on Monday the 13th, oh my goodness, if you're a Garfield fan, you know what that means. Monday the 13th at 10:04 a.m., I was going to sit here and I was going to talk to you. And, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. It's okay wherever you are. If you're down here or up here, it doesn't matter. You are where you are. Just take this message. I love you. I love you. I'm a person out there and I don't know you, but it doesn't matter. I just love everyone. If I were to connect with you right now, it would just be straight up love, because I understand what it's like to, be all over the place. Addiction, jail, you name it. I've been through it. I've been at the bottom, and now I'm rising high. And no matter where you are, I love you. And, be a free weirdo. Be a free weirdo, folks. That's the message of the day. All right, guys, I love you. Like, subscribe, all that stuff that I always say. Go watch that video right there. I love you. I'm going to have the best day ever. You have the best day ever, too. All right, guys. Love you. I love you. I really do. For real.